Good morning, everyone. It's Dr. Patmos. It is April 6th, 2026, and I've been thinking a lot lately about how Donald Trump thinks, how he responds to crises, and what his leadership and management style is, how dysfunctional it is. And it occurred to me not too long ago that he has a fundamental pattern of executive dysfunction. He doesn't understand how to be a chief executive very well. And so he goes about doing things in a kind of dumb way. And if you look at how he handled COVID, it was a classic example of complete dysfunction. And then if you look at how he's handling the situation in Iran, it's another disastrous executive dysfunction. And they are totally different issues. One is a viral pandemic, and the other is a terrorist regime that's a threat to the world. So they're very different problems, but his approach to them are very similar, actually. And I can draw, at least I think I can draw, a direct parallel between how Trump handled COVID and how he's handling Iran, and how these two issues reflect the same executive dysfunction. So here we go. So let's go back to COVID, and I'll tell you exactly what he did and how he botched it. So in January 2020, I remember it very well. I had just gone to Maui to work, and I spoke to a doctor who had contacts in China, and they were getting phone calls from China saying, "Watch out, there's a virus here. We've never seen it before. It's really bad and it's really contagious." And I had a heads up in mid January that this virus was rampaging through China, and it was terrifying, and that we were at risk in the United States. Sure enough, a month later, the virus appeared in the United States, and its infectivity, how quick this virus spreads and how light and how contagious it is, was extremely alarming. So the infectious disease experts at the time went to Donald Trump and said, "Mr. President, we've got a very bad problem here. We have a virus that is incredibly contagious and incredibly lethal. About 2% of people who get it die, and 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 they are not the infectious. The value that describes how infectious a virus is off the charts. Mr. President, if we don't do something now, right now, this virus is going to spread around the world, and in a matter of months, every human being on the planet will be infected with COVID, and 2% or so will die. That is a sublethal extinction event. 2% of 7 billion people is a lot of people. We have 330 million in the United States. 2% of that is a lot of people. So, Mr. President, we've got ourselves a disaster on our hands, and we don't have a vaccine. We don't have a medication to prevent it. All we have are infection control practices, which are standard and tried and true and tested and have been with us for decades. So we're recommending aggressive infection control. That means quarantine everybody, make everybody wear masks, wash their hands, shut it down. We have to stop this virus from getting into the United States and spreading from person to person, and that requires aggressive infection control measures. Exactly what we do in the hospital to stop the spread of a virus or pathogen in a hospital environment. We know how to stop the spread of viruses. We do it every day in hospitals. It's called infection control. The recommendations we make in infection control are often people don't like them, especially administration. They're costly, they're tedious, and people don't like them. Doctors don't like them. A lot of doctors, try to find ways around infection control policies, but that's what you have to do if you want to stop the spread of a pathogen. Well, the infection control, infectious disease experts went to Donald Trump and said, "This is what you got to do. You got to shut it down, and you got to go with all the infection control practices." And for the first few days, Trump said, "Oh, okay," and we did. And then about a week later, by end of February, late February, he figured out, wait a second, I've got an election coming up here soon, and and this is going to hurt the economy. It's going to hurt my chances. This is not a strategy I like. We've got to come up with something different. So what did he do? Well, what Trump did, and by the way, this is all in the video below. What Trump did was he fired all of his infectious disease experts, but he didn't just fire them. See, when he has a run-in with people, he doesn't just fire them. He fires them, and then he goes about trashing their reputations and attacking them to diminish their perception in the public. So he trashed everybody, fired everybody, got rid of Fauci and all the other experts who were giving him advice that he didn't want to hear, and he brought in other experts, people who are unqualified, to tell him what he give him another approach. So he brought in a gaggle of unqualified people with no training in infectious diseases, and they came up with the Great Barrington Declaration, which became Trump's approach. Basically, let her rip. Stop worrying about trying to vaccinate everybody. Of course, he did continue to try to pursue the vaccine, and he did, with Operation Warp Speed, but then quickly abandoned the effort to vaccinate everybody, going with the Great Barrington Declaration, which was, this is only bad for elderly people. Don't worry about everybody else. Just let her rip. Vaccinate only the high risk elderly. Let everybody else get it. We'll get herd immunity, and it'll all go away. It's basically to paraphrase Great Barrington Declaration, it boils down to we want them infected. So he changed his tune. He went from following infectious disease and infection control advice to following the advice of economists who told him, just we want them infected and it'll all just magically go away. And that's what he did. In addition, to get some additional political spin, he had took Steve Bannon's advice and created the Brownstone Institute, which is an institute that's designed to legitimize misinformation. And came up with the idea of blaming. He also retained O'Donnell and Associates, a political PR firm, who came up with a strategy of blame it on the Chinese, say that they caused it, that it was a lab leak. So Steve Bannon came up with the idea of lab leak. He got a doctor from China, Dr. Ming, I forget her name now, Chinese doctor, and brought her over and put her on 60 Minutes. I'm sorry, on Fox News, and she said, "Oh no, this was the Chinese created this. This is intentional. This is bio warfare." And so Trump engaged in this massive misinformation campaign to, number one, say it's a hoax, it'll all go away. We don't need to mask. We don't need to social distance. Open up the economy. Just vaccinate the elderly. Don't worry about everybody else. Let her rip, and this will all just magically go away. The result? Well, we had the worst performance in the world by far. 1.2 million Americans died of COVID. That's more Americans than died in all the wars we've ever been in combat, from the Revolutionary War to the present. We haven't lost 1.2 million Americans in combat. We lost 1.2 million Americans in 2 years due to COVID. 300,000 to 400,000 of those deaths were preventable because people refused to be vaccinated because of the misinformation they got from Trump's fake experts. So he botched it totally. We ended up with he certainly reopened the economy. That's a good thing. But the price we paid was 1.2 million families lost loved ones. 300,000 to 400,000 of those deaths were completely preventable. And we allowed the virus to get into their population and to become established. We now have a host reservoir that's actively hosting, reproducing, mutating, and disseminating various strains and mutants of this same virus. So we created a perpetual problem. So what Trump did was not only lead to a lot of deaths, but he also created a situation of never-ending, ongoing COVID, which is what we have now. Now, how is that related to Iran? Well, it's the same thing. His mismanagement is exactly the same. Iran is a problem. We've got a terrorist regime that's done horrible things, and everybody agrees that regime needs to be replaced. And he had people advising him, on how to go about doing that, like people like John Bolton, who's by no means a dove. He's a very hawkish guy, but he's very smart. He's been around a long time. He understands these issues really well. He was Trump's advisor. Trump advised him on how to go about doing this. Trump didn't like the advice he got. So what did he do? He fired Bolton, but he didn't just fire Bolton. He did it to Bolton, same thing he did to Fauci, basically tried to destroy his reputation. He's even had the Department of Justice indict Bolton on some crazy charge that, of mishandling classified information, as if Trump is somehow a saint when it comes to handling classified information. Well, anyhow, so Trump brings in a gaggle of unqualified people, just like he did with COVID. He brought in a gaggle of unqualified people to advise him on military operations. Pete Hegseth is a perfect example. As a guy who's basically a news anchor with a couple of years of National Guard experience. He's certainly not a admiral or a general. Doesn't have a lifetime in military. He's a news anchor from Fox. Brings him in, makes him Secretary of Defense. Brings in other unqualified people to advise him on energy and finance and commerce and treasury and so forth. A bunch of stockbrokers, basically, is what he brought in to people to tell him what he wanted to hear. He doesn't want to hear the truth. He wants to hear what he wants to hear. And if you tell him something he doesn't want to hear, instead of saying, "Gee, maybe I should listen," he fires you and then trashes you in the media. And he goes about making a decision about how to handle things based on his gut, just like he did with COVID. He brought in the wrong people, fired the right people. Sorry for bouncing my computer. Brought in the fired the right people, brought in the wrong people, got bad advice and acted on it because he thought it was his gut told him that was the right thing to do. And then he goes about and creates this huge PR campaign to convince his base of things that are not true. So he has the base convinced that COVID was created by China and Fauci, that it was a hoax and it's just the flu and don't worry about it. It'll all just magically go away. Just the elderly need to be immunized and messenger RNA vaccines are bad. He's got people in his administration saying that, and in with regard to Iran, it's like, oh, we've won, and this is we did a fantastic job and it's great. Meanwhile, what is the reality on the ground? The Iranian regime is still there, still in power, just as ideologically committed to their Islamist theocracy as ever before. There was no evidence that Iran has had a change of heart. Yes, their nuclear program has had a setback, but they still have the intelligence and expertise to resume it, and they don't have to even resume it. They just go buy a bomb. You don't think that Pakistan or North Korea would be happy to sell a bomb to Iran? So we left the regime in charge. We haven't prevented them from, in the future, from getting a bomb because we don't have a regime there that is philosophically and ideologically committed to not having a bomb. So we know they're going to, as soon as this thing is over, they're just going to resume pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Yes, we have done tremendous damage, thank goodness, to Hamas and Hezbollah, but they'll just reconstitute it. In fact, because of the fourth reason I'm about to mention, Iran will have even an easier time reconstituting their nuclear program and reconstituting Hamas and Hezbollah because they now have complete control over the Strait of Hormuz and they can tax every tanker going out and collect, and which is what they're doing now, and collect billions of dollars of revenue to fund their reconstruction and their reinstitution of their nuclear program and their continued support for terrorism. So what have we accomplished? We've accomplished nothing except bombing the heck out of a country. The regime is still in power. They still can pursue nuclear weapons, either by making them or buying them. They can still support terrorism. And they now have a new funding stream to the tune of billions of dollars to do so. And we've now invited into the conflict China and Russia, who are actively aligned with and helping Iran now to get back on its feet, which they will continue to do. So if we leave with the strait closed, we've lost on all 4 points. In fact, we've even given Iran a stronger position now because now they have total control of the strait, and we've conceded on that. And if we leave with the strait still closed, we've lost strategically on 4 fronts, actually 5 fronts, because now Iran has stronger alliances with Russia and China. So in any way you look at this is a complete disaster strategically. Yes, we bombed the heck out of Iran. That doesn't mean you win the war. Counting bombs and destroying buildings doesn't mean you win a war. And we haven't won this war, at least not yet. And John Bolton, in his video below, gave a fantastic presentation on exactly what we should have done to deal with this, which is the right way. But Trump didn't want to hear from the experts, so he fires the experts, demeans them, diminishes them, destroys their reputation, brings in unqualified people to tell him what he wants to hear, and then he goes about completing or doing a completely ridiculous strategy, and then has this massive PR campaign to convince his base that it's all going to be just fine. COVID was just a hoax. It was all created by China and Fauci. Iran, we've won. We've won. The war's over. We did it. We beat the hell out of them. They don't have an army. They don't have a navy. They don't have this. They don't have that. Meanwhile, they have the Strait of Hormuz. We've lost on all 4 or 5 domains of this conflict. If we wanted to do it right, what Trump should do is go get John Bolton and bring him in to advise him, replace Pete Hegseth with an experienced military leader, and go about taking the advice of the experts if he wanted to do it right. But he doesn't want to do it right. He just wants to do something that will get him some headlines. He thought that if he bombed Iran, they would just quit overnight and suddenly become a democracy. Well, how naive is that? About as naive as thinking that COVID was just a hoax. You see the similarity here? There's a very similar thing here between COVID and Iran and how he handled it. It's his approach to executive thinking and executive function. He doesn't know how to be an executive. He inherited a company and he's a king of his companies and he runs his companies like a king. He's not an effective executive. And how he handled these crises is a perfect example. He's an idiot and he's really messed up. He messed up COVID to the tune of 1.2 million dead Americans, and he's messing up Iran. What we will end up with in a few years is we'll be right back. We just mowed the lawn, as Bolton said. We will be right back in a couple of years with the same problem all over again. Thank you, Donald Trump. You don't know what you're doing.